All right, so that was day one, the main candidates' speeches. It's day two, where the DA Congress members are going to have to be choosing one of those two. Senior reporter Aviwe Mtila is on the floor of the Congress, where it's all going to get very busy, very exciting a little bit later. Hello to you, Aviwe. Let's get an idea then of what this morning is going to look like. Yes, of course, there's the voting for the leadership, but there's lots of other work they have to get through as well, don't they?
A lot of other work looking into policies as well on day two of the Federal Congress of the Democratic Alliance. In fact, those 2,000 delegates have braved the cold Johannesburg weather, making their way to Gallagher Convention Center, where we are assuming that the voting is already taking place. As we are told, 6 o'clock is when they get to choose their leadership. We do know, of course, a very important leadership that will take the Democratic Alliance into next year's elections. Of course, they say that the ANC is most likely going to dip below 50%. And in fact, some of the opinion polls suggest that it might even be under 40%. So whoever emerges here as the federal leader will most likely then be the country president if those coalition talks go accordingly. In fact, let me rope in now one of the presiding officers to find out what's happening inside and what we can expect today. That is Greg Krambach. Thank you for joining us at ENCA. But most importantly, I think, is the voting already underway here?
Yes, so good morning, Aviwe, and good morning to the ENCA viewers. Voting has opened on time at 6 o'clock. I was present with my presiding officers, Bridget Masango and Dr. Mimi Gondwe, to open the portal, and voting has now started. The first few delegates who'd like to vote here and share the excitement have arrived. They've also voted. Many people have already voted online, as our system provides for.
Okay, and yesterday mostly dealt with the constitutional amendments. This is the constitution that will take you into next year's elections. What are the major changes that have been amended in the constitution itself? Yeah,
if I had to identify perhaps the single most important change of the work we did yesterday in adopting resolutions and amendments to our constitution, I'd pick out the reforms we've made to our internal processes regarding our Federal Legal Commission, which just streamlines various processes that we need to keep our internal party discipline running smoothly, and that now has made for a much more robust and much more flexible system that is going to help us into the future.
Okay, and we're going to the elections, of course, and you have to do a lot of convincing there. And the DA has been largely criticized for a party that caters for a minority, being a white party. How do you tell your electorate on the ground that that's not the case?
Well, I would point to the evidence, and I would point to the fact that the Western Cape, which is the province that we do run, has the lowest unemployment rate in the country. We've had literally hundreds of thousands of South Africans semigrate to the Western Cape. That process is accelerating because people from all walks of life, including many people from the Eastern Cape, know that the chances of getting a job in the Western Cape are far higher than in any other province. And so our pro-poor budgets in the city of Cape Town, the economic powerhouse that the Western Cape is becoming, is lifting people out of poverty, and that rising tide lifts all boats. And so we would be promoting that, but also our successes in Midvaal, in Umgeni. When the DA took over on 1 November 2021, there was only 131 people getting an indigent grant. We've increased that to over 3,000. Those are the kind of tangible proofs we'll be offering to the voters as to how we really help everybody, but especially the poorest of the poor, and life is better where the DA governs.
Let's look at the Western Cape, because there's been criticism there, for example, saying that the governance in Cape Town itself is not the same as in the townships. Your Inyanga, your Khayelitsha, they're not getting the same treatment, where you're seeing a clean town as opposed to the townships themselves.
Well, I would say that criticism is a little bit unfair. We have many cleanups, if you're talking about a clean town, in those areas. And I think the proof again is the way the voters actually vote. So very recently we had a by-election in Inyanga where we went from low single-digit figures right up to 14%. And that's a big endorsement that the party is making some kind of impact there. And the same kind of thing happens, for example, in the Eastern Cape. We had a by-election in Enoch Ngijima. Also very recently, 100% black ward, the DA polled 38%. I think we gave the ANC a huge fright. So I believe those criticisms that try to paint us as a party of only being a party for minorities are not borne out by election results, where we are surging amongst black voters. And all the opinion polls that you referred to in your opening remarks, we would not be rising so high if we weren't getting substantially more black support, because I think, as many of your viewers will know, white people only make up 9% of our country's population are. So for the DA to be polling in the 30s, we must be doing something right for the majority of the people in this country.
And those opinion polls are suggesting that we're headed for coalition governance in the national scheme of things. How do we make it work then, if it's so difficult in the metros that we're seeing in Tshwane, Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni and the likes?
Well, I think that's the challenge that our elected leadership by 2:30 this afternoon are going to have to face, because you're quite right. It is going to be difficult to manage coalitions. We have in Gauteng found that to be a challenge. But that is why we say to voters, if you don't want unstable coalitions, if you want government to be secure and be able to get on with their program of renewal and rebuilding our country, the best thing is to give the DA an outright majority. Because where we've had an outright majority, as in Midvaal, Umgeni, Cape Town, many other municipalities, governance is much easier. And you don't have to worry about keeping a flimsy coalition together. You can get on with the job of delivering for all the people. So that's going to be our message going out. Outright majority for the DA is a strong governance, lots of good service delivery.
Okay, so the voting is happening now from 6 until 9 o'clock. When will we then know who the federal leader be and the leadership itself?
So the voting is scheduled to end at 9. Obviously, we, like the IEC, can extend voting if there is a need to do so. And we will close voting at the appropriate time. Hopefully it will be 9 o'clock. We will then go into lockdown roughly 2 hours before the scheduled result. All the candidates and or their candidate agents will join myself and my 2 co-presiding officers in the counting room, and we will run the results. So we will know the results probably within about half an hour, but we'll stay in the room because we don't want anything to leak out. And then we'll rejoin plenary at about 2 o'clock, and we'll start with the deputy chairs for Federal Council and work our way right through to the leader, and that announcement is expected to come through somewhere between 2:15 and 2:30. Then you'll know.
Okay, we'll know at around just after 2 o'clock. Greg, before I let you know, I must ask, everything seems, up front, it's going well in the Congress itself. We've seen a number of performances, Vicky Sampson. How much did the Federal Congress itself cost?
I'm afraid I can't. I'd love to be able to tell you, Aviwe, but that's internal party information. But let me just say this. I think we've got a lot of value for money, because over the years we've got quite skilled at making sure that a little bit of money goes a long way. And this Congress is actually cheaper than the last 2 in terms of what we've actually spent. But since you were covering it yesterday, I'm sure you'd have noticed the absolute vibe. This place was rocking yesterday. And we've done all of that on a lower budget than we had in the last 2 Congresses. But the actual figure, I'm afraid, that's internal party information.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. Let me let you continue with the duty as presiding officer of the Democratic Alliance at this Federal Congress, of course, as that voting is currently underway. Voting, of course, for that crucial position of federal leader, the person that will take, in fact, the leadership of the Democratic Alliance into next year's national elections. They say the polls are already predicting that the governing African National Congress will dip below 50%, even some opinion polls suggesting that it might even be under 40%. So the party itself is hoping to capitalize on that, and then ensuring that the person that gets elected here will most likely then be the country president, depending on how those coalition talks go. But of course, we do know in the positions that are contested here, there are 2 that are uncontested. That's the position of federal chair, where we're expecting Helen Ziller to retain that position, as well as the position of the federal finance chair. That's the position that Dr. Dion George holds. In fact, holding it for 5 consecutive terms, and we're expecting him to hold that very position once more as the person that keeps the finances of the Democratic Alliance. But of course, we heard here from Greg Kambok, around 2:30 is when we'll finally know the outcome of who then takes the Democratic Alliance into next year's elections. It is between John Steenhuisen, a person that says that they've been part of the party itself since 1997, when it was still the Democratic Party, and you heard Steenhuisen saying that, in fact, he has leadership qualities on the ground as councillor for at least 10 years, serving as councillor. But Dr. Mpho Phalatse, the former mayor of Johannesburg, says that she has governance experience, both as the former MMC of Health in Johannesburg, as well as the mayor of Johannesburg. She has extensive experience there, also leading in coalitions. Given that now we're most likely going to go into coalition government, she says that she's led alongside 9 other parties as she was the mayor of Johannesburg. So those 2,000 delegates now are getting to choose then the leadership of the Democratic Alliance, which will know then by the afternoon today, Gareth, who then emerges as a federal leader.
Yeah, it all seems to be running on time as well. It was one of the credits for the DA yesterday, is just how on time this entire Congress has been going. So Aviwe Mtila, thank you very much indeed, and very good points as well, that what comes out of today's votes and out of today's results with the DA Congress is going to have a very real effect on the national elections next year, especially since there's now talk of a coalition national government. It's not to say that is what's going to happen, but if it does, today's results at the Congress could be very, very important.